2026国际基础科学大会在北京开幕之际，高端访谈专访菲尔兹奖获得者马丁·海尔。出席大会开幕式并担任颁奖嘉宾，他认为
So it's really extremely broad, and that's very nice to see.
谈及人工智能对数学研究的影响，他说
What is interesting for mathematicians is the things that you cannot do automatically.
对于中国的基础科学发展，他表示
Over the last few years, I mean, it's been really impressive to see how many resources the government has put into mathematics and I guess into the basic sciences.
高端访谈，敬请收看。
关注国际焦点，洞察世界风云。大家好，欢迎来到本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵。2026国际基础科学大会在北京开幕。今天我们要对话大会重要与会嘉宾菲尔兹奖获得者马丁·海尔。作为中国科学院外局院士，他认为中国的基础科学取得了怎样的发展成就？从物理转行数学，他如何解读数学在社会发展中的重要意义？又如何看待人工智能对于数学研究的影响呢？今天我们一起在对话中寻找答案。
8月9日，2026国际基础科学大会在北京正式拉开帷幕。这场为期2周的全球学术盛会，以聚焦基础科学、引领人类未来为主题。如今已举办4年，多位菲尔兹奖、图灵奖等国际大奖得主、中外院士、全球知名学者代表齐聚，共同见证这场全球基础科学领域顶级学术盛会的启幕。菲尔兹奖获得者马丁·海尔就是其中之一。
Professor Heyer, thank you so much for joining us on Latest Talk. Earlier this morning, you attended the opening ceremony of the International Congress of Basic Science, and you actually presented awards to some of those mathematicians, etc. So what has been your major takeaway so far?
Well, I think it's been really great to see how sort of lively research in basic sciences is, to see recognition for the great works that people did, and in a very broad sort of range of areas. I think that's one thing which was very nice. It's very rare to actually have one congress where you see everything from pure mathematics to applied mathematics to theoretical physics to engineering. And so it's really extremely broad, and that's very nice to see.
And how do you understand the importance of basic science, for instance, from the perspective of a mathematician in today's development?
Well, I think one significance of especially mathematics is that you really try to find universal truths, right? So there are things that really remain true forever, which is very rare nowadays, yes. Right? And so that provides you with a really solid foundation, right? Like the fact that, the square root of 2 is irrational was discovered, thousands of years ago, and it's still true nowadays, right? So it gives you really a basic, solid foundation, and it gives you a language in which we can then express and understand science and sort of build on that. And also one thing which is important to notice is maybe many areas of mathematics don't have like immediate utility or immediate applications. One reason why we do it is mostly curiosity. Humanity got where it is by having a thirst for knowledge, right? We basically just want to know. We have this curiosity.
And over the years, you've had opportunities to work with the Chinese academic community, and also you're a foreign member of Chinese Academy of Sciences. So what are the most impressive developments or progress that you have witnessed through the years on China's scientific and technological advancements?
So I think it's very clear that in the last, mostly maybe 5 to 10 years, the level of mathematical research within mainland China has increased a lot. I guess over the past decade or so, because the Chinese government made a very strong push to try to get these people to come back to China, and it succeeded with some of them, actually quite a few of them. And now there are also more younger Chinese, the sort of new generation of Chinese researchers, like maybe do a postdoc abroad and then come back to China from permanent position. And we see this even with very strong mathematicians. And so I think that's really something that has changed over the last few years.
And the main reason for this kind of progress was actually the efforts and support made from the national level by the Chinese government. And also Chinese President Xi Jinping has set out a broad vision to build China into a strong nation in science and technology by 2035. So how do you understand the significance of this, let's say, long-time policy support and also the emphasis by the Chinese government in basic science and also in the priority of development in science and technology?
By and large, scientists need good conditions in order to be able to do their research. Depending on what kind of science you do, you value different things. So maybe if you do experimental sciences, of course, you need more resources for a big lab. In mathematics, by and large, the resources are maybe not as big, but people need some minimal amount of support to be able to travel and to, it's very important to be able to discuss with others. But also one thing that people value is stability. People like to live in a place where they can kind of see their future and they don't have to worry about, some revolution happening 5 years down the line. And so in that sense, it's, they're not surprising that people who already have attachment to China would come back because they would see maybe a more stable environment and somehow with a more clear kind of long-term commitment to supporting sciences, than if you have to be afraid that if there's, in 2 years' time, just because of some strange idea somebody has, science funding is suddenly cut. So I think it's a very smart strategy of the Chinese government to somehow, lay out some kind of long-term commitment to guarantee some level of stability for people if they come back.
And which aspect of China's academic ecosystem impressed you the most over the years?
Over the last few years, it's been really impressive to see how many resources the government has put into mathematics and I guess into the basic sciences in general. I think one thing that also has been really quite impressive to see is the rise, and that comes with the fact that strong Chinese scientists have come back to China, is the fact that now you have really strong young scientists who stay to do their PhD as well, who can do their whole scientific education in China. So I think that's something which is really quite impressive.
And also this year, 2 Chinese nationals, Deng Yu and Wang Hong, were awarded the Fields Medal. So what does this moment mean for the international mathematical community?
It's kind of Nobel Prize in mathematics, and so it's always kind of exciting for the community to see, to learn about the works of the laureates. I think it really shows somehow that, there are extremely strong Chinese mathematicians and they've gotten really the top recognition this year.
2014年，马丁·海尔因为对随机偏微分方程理论的杰出贡献，获得菲尔兹奖。这位斩获数学界诺贝尔奖的数学家，在大学时学的却是物理专业。在学习与研究的过程中，马丁·海尔发现，理论物理中的一些想法可能会被推翻，而数学并非如此。博士毕业后，他选择投身数学领域。
You've won many distinguished awards, including the Fields Medal and also the Breakthrough Prize for your contribution in SPDE, the stochastic partial differential equation. Give us an idea, hopefully in layman terms, about what this is about and why does SPDE matter?
Yeah, so maybe I start with sort of building from the end. So differential equations, they are the kind of equations that basically describe most of nature, most of how things evolve. So very often it's about things that change over time. So one of the simplest example is, for example, if you want to describe the solar system, then you can write a differential equations that describes the motion of the planets around the sun. And if you solve this, then you can predict exactly where the planets are going to be in 1,000 years or in 10,000 years, right? Then partial differential equations are about describing the evolution of things that also somehow depend on space in a more continuous way. So for example, if you want to describe something like, the air in this room, that requires a much larger kind of description, right? So you need to know basically at every point in the room how dense the air is at that point, maybe the temperature of the air at that point, and maybe in which direction it moves and how fast it moves, right? So that's somehow many, many more degrees of freedom. It's something that depends on every point of space. And so the equations that describe this, that's partial differential equations. And then stochastic partial differential equations are the ones that describe these kind of systems, but where you also have some random influence. So, for example, say you want to describe the waves on the ocean, then that would be a partial differential equation. But then maybe the wind blows, and you don't really have a good model for the wind, so you think it just blows randomly, right? So one way of modeling it is to say it just blows randomly in different locations, and then that gives you a random force on the waves, and that would be then a stochastic partial differential equation.
But where does it apply in the real world? Because you once said that even though the details of the fluctuations of stock market and also the movement of water atoms are different, their probabilistic outcomes are the same. So the SPDE, it can be either applied in, let's say, physics, in finance, in different walks of life, right?
Yes, so it applies in many different areas. So for example, the SPDE that describes a fire that's burning, right, like the position of the fire front, right, which moves as it burns, that would be exactly the same SPDE as the one that describes, if you have a liquid crystal.
Professor, your work is considered very challenging, even for many professional mathematicians, and that's why some of your fellow mathematicians have made a joke that this manuscript must be downloaded to your brain from a more intelligent alien race. How would you respond to comments like this?
Well, it's very flattering. Yeah, I'm not sure I would go as far. In some sense, it was a bit surprising because that theory, which I developed maybe about 10 years ago, a bit over 10 years ago for describing stochastic PDEs, it could have been discovered 100 years ago. In some sense, Whitney was a very well-known analyst, a famous mathematician. He lived almost 100 years ago. So he wrote an article in the 1930s, where already a very similar structure, actually, he used a very similar kind of language, a similar way of looking at things in that article. But then it was never picked up. And I guess it was sort of a lot of luck that I happened to kind of stumble upon this way of, describing things that then became very relevant.
And some of your colleagues have also spoken about your very rare mathematical intonation, the kind of ability to sense a path towards a deeper solution. So what's this kind of intuition? Is something that you're born with, or you believe that is cultivated through years of work?
I think these sort of things are always a bit of a mix of both. I mean, for me personally, it helped a lot that I actually studied physics and not mathematics. For me personally, I thought it's easier to move from physics to mathematics, where you first get the intuitive understanding of something, and that's somehow the physics side, and then you deepen that understanding and you sort of make it rigorous, and that's the mathematical side.
You just mentioned that you studied physics from undergrad through PhD. So was this choice partly kind of a teenage rebellion, given that your father is also a very renowned mathematician?
Right, so it was partly I studied physics kind of in order not to study mathematics, which was a bit of a failure. But also, I mean, the physics studies in Geneva were very mathematical at the time, so it was kind of, in some sense, both at the same time. And then also the PhD was with Jean-Pierre Ekman. So Jean-Pierre Ekman is a physicist. He likes to think of himself as a physicist. He's in the Geneva physics department. But all of his students who stayed in academia actually stayed in mathematics department. So he's very mathematical.
在国际基础科学大会的现场，多位获奖科学家分享科研心得，呼吁要重视好奇心驱动的基础研究，以及打破不同学科之间交流壁垒的重要性。马丁·海尔就是跨学科人才的代表，同时他也致力于推进深度跨国科研协作。2021年，马丁·海尔当选中国科学院外籍院士，成为连接中英数学研究的桥梁。他多次访问中国高校，与年轻学者探讨随机偏微分方程在人工智能中的应用。在他看来，数学的本质是用简洁的语言描述复杂世界，而这一使命正随着中国基础科学、世界人工智能的发展，焕发出新的生机。
Professor Hireless, as we know, that AI is advancing so rapidly, affecting almost every aspect of our life. You once said that mathematicians are quite safe in the era of AI. What made you believe so?
So in recent years, we've seen like enormous advances in AI, and in particular also mathematical abilities of AI. So 2 years ago, AI systems were barely able to recover extremely basic mathematical results. Right? Nowadays, they're able to do kind of PhD level mathematics. So they're able to be useful actually in mathematical research. So it's becoming a very useful tool. And it's clear that there are some problems or some kinds of mathematical problems that AI is very good at, and that then as a consequence will be considered sort of uninteresting in a way by mathematicians, right? So in some sense, by definition, what is interesting for mathematicians is the things that you cannot do automatically.
Things that are on the current stage are haven't been proven,
Right.
or
haven't been proven, or really even maybe involve some mathematical structure that we haven't even discovered yet, or that we haven't found yet. And at least at the moment, one doesn't see that much evidence of AI really being creative in that sense, but it is creative in other sense. So it seems extremely good at taking several existing mathematical results and putting them together to get new results if you prompt them in the right way and you guide them in the right way. So it's definitely an extremely useful tool for mathematics, and to some extent it can do some of the technicalities of mathematics very well. So I think it's going to change mathematics, and it's going to move in different directions, and it's going to make some things much faster. Maybe it's going to kill off some areas of mathematics because they're going to be considered uninteresting. But I don't think it's going to somehow kill mathematics. It's just going to change us and going to make us move in different directions and maybe allow us to go faster.
Some mathematicians, let's say the award-winning mathematician Jacob Shimmerman, yeah, and he believes that AI will be better than mathematicians in doing math within 2 years.
Yes, that's true. I've heard him say that.
That's right.
Not quite sure. I believe that this is true as a blanket statement. I believe it's very good at certain things, and it's very strong technically. And so yes, there might be, it might be able to come up with some arguments by putting things together in a very technical way that basically no mathematician could do. And so in that sense, yes, it would be stronger than any mathematician. But that doesn't mean that it can do everything better than any mathematician, right?
Well, in addition to being one of the world's leading mathematicians, you're also an accomplished computer programmer because while you were still a student, you developed a sound software called Amadeus, which is widely used even today. Did you expect it to become so popular at that time?
Well, actually, in some sense, because, I mean, that was back in the early 90s. So, yeah, so I started developing this as a high school student, basically for a biology project. We had a biology teacher who made us do kind of little project. You know, there was a pond in front of the high school, and there were frogs in that pond. And so I did a recording of the frogs and then tried to compare the recording of the frogs with some tape recording of frogs that the biology teacher had in order to figure out what kind of frogs it is.
Oh.
But like the number of tools that were available were extremely limited, right? And so I knew it was a useful tool, and that since I was using it myself for this high school project, maybe I didn't really expect it to last for so long somehow. I actually released a new version last week.
How can you make it even possible, being a mathematician, a world-leading mathematician, at the same time, you know, develop all those programs and update and even launch new versions? How do you manage to make all these things happen at a pretty top-notch level?
The programming thing, it's more of a, it's kind of a side project, and so I use it as a kind of hobby, if you want. If I have some free time and I want to not think about mathematics, think about something else, then I work on that.
You said that sometimes you do something completely different while still keeping the problem at the back of your mind. So how does this kind of a distance help you to generate new ideas, new inspirations to your mathematical research?
I don't know how, but I think it's something relatively common. So I think it's quite common among mathematicians. It's kind of a well-known thing that if you have a very specific problem that you want to solve and you focus on it, and then you think you have some way of doing it, right? Like, so you're close, right, but not quite there.
You don't keep digging into it.
Well, at some point it becomes counterproductive, right? Like you sort of get stuck on something. You know, at some point maybe you sort of stop to see the forest for the trees, if you see what I mean, right? Like you kind of get focused on certain details, and you sort of lose
the bigger picture.
Right. But you need to know about these details in order to, right? So it's somehow, you need to have both at the same time. And then at some point when you dig, you sort of get too focused on the small details, or maybe you get sort of down some rabbit holes that, you know, where you get stuck. Just that then at some point you have to sort of relax, right? Like sort of stop, in some sense, focusing too hard. And I think this is quite well known. I mean, many people say that they have a similar experience. That then, you know, maybe you stop thinking about it, you do something else, but then, you know, maybe either during a walk or maybe just, you know, before falling asleep, or, you know, in that kind of time when you're really kind of, or when you're coding some software, you know, you sort of keep thinking about these things, but maybe in a sort of more relaxed way. And then that actually
somehow just figured out.
Yeah, so sometimes, you know, you just realize, oh yeah, but I was just stupid, I didn't think about it in this way, and that's the correct way of thinking about it.
So, Professor Haier, your wife is Chinese, also a very famous mathematician, and you've said that that's why at home sometimes you mix things up a little bit, for instance, using Chinese spices to cook vegetables. So how has, let's say, Chinese flavor, or more broadly, the Chinese culture influenced you in a meaningful way?
To be honest, it's mainly about cuisine. So, I mean, I really like Chinese cooking, and I like Chinese food a lot. Maybe I wouldn't really say that we cook Chinese, but we cook Chinese-inspired somehow.
Like a fusion.
Yeah, like some kind of fusion between maybe European and Chinese cooking. I think it's, you know, for example, I mean, Chinese cooking definitely has much more interesting ways of preparing vegetables than European cooking, where vegetables are usually prepared in a very boring way. So yeah, I mean, so we always cook vegetables in a Chinese way.
What do you love the most about Chinese cuisine? Like, which is there a specific cuisine that?
I like Sichuan cuisine a lot, actually.
Oh, you like spicy food?
Yeah, I quite like spicy food, yeah.
For instance?
Well, one of my favorite dishes is the boiled fish.
Oh, 水煮鱼.
Yeah.
Right. It's the fish that is boiled with lots of chili oil.
Yes,
and,
with lots of chili oil and some cabbage and maybe some
Nongming,
mushrooms.
the green pepper
Yes,
chili.
Yeah, the Szechuan peppers. Yeah.
Besides that, is there any other, let's say, elements of Chinese culture that also influence you a little bit, or that you really enjoyed?
I really liked the characters. And I tried to learn them at the beginning, but we don't spend enough time in China, and there are too many of them. So I thought, well, I know just enough so I can recognize a few of them on the street, and so it's enough to not be completely disoriented when I'm in China, but of course not enough to be able to, read any real text somehow. But I really like the look also of the Chinese, of the Chinese calligraphy also. So that's something I really kind of enjoy quite a lot. But it's it's difficult to learn them because there's too many of them.
So, Professor, if you were to give just one piece of advice to those young researchers, especially young mathematicians who want to build a life on mathematics, what would it be?
I think one thing which is important is to figure out what are the things that you really like and that, which aspects of mathematics really talk to you and interest you, like, genuinely, and not fall into the trap of moving into an area just because you think that this area is hot at the moment and that this is, therefore a good area to work in because maybe then it's quicker to become successful or famous because you work in a hot area, right? If you really enjoy something and it happens to be a fashionable area, that's of course totally fine, right? But I think it's really important to kind of also listen to yourself and figure out what are the things that you actually really enjoy and really like.
That's very meaningful. Professor Heyer, it was a great pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing your insights on this amazing mathematical journey.
Thanks a lot for having me.
在专访当中，马丁海尔教授对数学的热忱让我们印象深刻。他认为数学是探寻永恒的真理，求知欲让人类文明发展至今。他还表示，中国重视基础科学发展，为科学家们提供了良好的科研环境。中国长期稳定的科研规划极具远见。感谢您收看本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵，我们下期再会。